Welcome to a journey through time and community as we celebrate 40 years of BOMA Idaho. Today, we'll hear from a few of the hardworking visionaries, leaders, and change makers whose dreams shaped the beginnings of the commercial real estate landscape and put them at the heart of the growth in Boise, the Treasure Valley, and across the Gem State. Each of them remember where they started.
So I had just moved back, armed with my 3 months between business school years at Citibank in their real estate industries division, and knew enough to just be really dangerous, but ended up thinking, this would be a good thing.
At that time, I had an opportunity to come back and join with my brothers and open a development firm I'm going to date myself here, in 1977.
Well, the downtown was a cute little downtown, and when I first went through, and it was during the summer, and I remember I borrowed my mother-in-law's car, which was a convertible, so I had the top down. I'm just driving around and observing things.
I had been out here on a high school ski trip in 1983, and we went to Bogus Basin.
And that would have been in '83, and I was still there probably a little bit, but then we decided to try to open a branch in Boise. So I came down to Boise and started practicing law here.
When we started the company, it was just Tim and I, and a young lady named Kathy Hoff, who was everything to us. My dad was very active in real estate, so I kind of grew up around the industry.
33 years this past June. I've had the good fortune of having one employer for my entire career.
I moved to Boise 32 years ago and fell in love with Boise. I was a competitive triathlete at the time, and Boise was a great place for that.
I had the privilege of working with the downtown business and residential community for 20 years.
It was when the market was just really booming in 2008. When the market crash came in 2010, I just kind of shifted my focus more to the commercial cleaning side.
Yeah, we moved here in 2013, and it's kind of wild how much things have changed since then.
In the 70s, with a population of roughly 75,000 and a downtown core that had largely been flattened by a devastating fire, Boise was on the verge of a change.
There had been this long, sort of painful kind of journey of the downtown area south of Maine, that 4 blocks being leveled, and then nothing really replacing it for many, many years. We decided in the late 70s that Boise might be ready for an office building, and that might be a catalyst then for other things to happen. I just remember standing on a flatbed truck at 9th and Main and looking kind of behind where I was standing and thinking, I sure hope we know what we're doing.
At that time, I was working for Greenwood Ski House during the wintertime, and they were trading me over to Georgia Cycles. I was like chattel to them, and eventually the folks at Georgia said, we really like him, we're going to keep him, and they did, and I was a partner there for almost 10 years before the folks at Collier's called and asked if I would consider a change of careers.
I was kind of a unique individual. I had some experience in the construction industry, and the building/development side always intrigued me, and I had a mentor that basically directed me to go into brokerage because it exposes you to a lot of different facets of the business.
With business growth, Idaho experienced an expansion that created challenges in infrastructure and opportunities to make an impact. And in the mid-'80s, with the hope of growth in the local industry, many commercial real estate professionals expressed the need for a way to connect with each other, where they could find resources for education and networking. They filed a request with the Building Owners and Managers Association International, operating since 1907. And on March 25, 1985, a small group of leaders filed with the Secretary of State's office, creating BOMA of the Treasure Valley. The effort was spearheaded by leaders like Kathy Reed, Greg Peterson, Larry Wickham, Susan Wishney, and Oppenheimer's Melody Jones, who recruited many of the leaders over the past few years.
She asked me if I would join this pretty small group of people called Building Owners and Managers Association, which I had no idea what it was, so I said, sure.
Toward the end of the board year, Melody said, well, somebody who wants to be president, next year. Brian, Grove, and I go, no, not me. And Brian said, yeah, I'll do it. 2 years, Grove, you're the vice president, you do that for 2 years, and then you take over president. I go, okay, whatever you say, Brian.
I met Grove through BOMA, and he and I became fast friends. And we were just super good friends for a long time while I was still in Boise. And I consider him to be a wonderful person and a good pal.
I was president of BOMA from 1999 to 2000. I followed in some big footsteps of Grove Hummert and Brian Ballard that really, they were instrumental in forming BOMA and getting it up and running and doing a great job. And I just kind of, they kind of drugged me along.
Melody just said, if you're going to get into the property management side, you definitely have to get involved in BOMA. You have to meet the people, the other property managers, the vendors.
BOMA has helped me break out of my shell and allowed me to engage with folks I normally wouldn't have engaged with, simply because I'm not that extrovert person.
I was BOMA president in 2005 through 2007.
And how was it?
It was good. It was the glory days.
Becoming president of BOMA was a lot of fun. It was sometimes more work than I thought it would be, sometimes less. But it was really fun to see like the inner workings. Even as a board member, you don't realize how much there is that the vice president and president and Jana are all doing to keep everything moving forward, set goals, you know, kind of determine the course that we're going to follow.
Yeah, I think BOMA's just been a fabulous organization. I think from our experience and all the people we've had involved in quite a few cases in leadership roles at BOMA, I think it's been great for them.
And it just involves all the different facets and players in our industry, from vendors to brokers to developers, managers. I mean, it's the whole tamale rolled into one. It's a great source for information and for growth and learning from each other. So we put a high value on that, and we always have, you know, numerous people involved at all different levels.
From these early efforts, the BOMA Association became a cornerstone of the local commercial real estate industry, and BOMA leaders knew they needed to hire some part-time help.
And then I think it was Kathy Rosera one day came through our offices, and I believe I was at White Leisure at the time, and threw this brochure on my desk and said, we ought to do one of these. And I picked it up, and as soon as I saw it, I said, well, of course we should do one of these.
The next year, BOMA held its first commercial real estate symposium.
I actually have a plaque on my wall that Bob Hosack gave me in 1998 because I spoke at the very first symposium.
My first year in the business was the first BOMA symposium. So it's got to be around that same time frame. But one of the first things I remember about BOMA was going to the symposium, and what a great event it was. You get to meet all the movers and shakers in the business and the programs. Hear what's going on around the valley.
Hey! Good morning, BOMA Idaho.
The number of people who would reach out to me after a BOMA event to ask more about my opinions and also to give a diverse opinion to it, it made a lot of who I am ultimately, because those contacts that reach out to me would then look for assistance, and as they say, business begets business. The more you do, the more you get to do.
We are so thrilled you could all join us here in beautiful Boise, Idaho, for an afternoon of networking, learning, and hopefully a little bit of fun.
The symposium has, again, survived the test of time, and it's been a marvelous get-together for everybody, hasn't it?
As BOMA has moved through the last 40 years, there have been successes at the legislature, in committee meetings, and with code development.
In 2002, BOMA Boise worked closely with owners in Idaho to reform Idaho's impact fees, ensuring that as a result of the Impact Fee Reform Act of 2002, that impact fees were based upon capital improvement plans developed by jurisdictions, and that they equitably treated all property owners.
Local BOMA leaders were instrumental in helping the Idaho Legislature and Division of Building Safety implement appropriate inspections and codes for elevators in commercial buildings, and continue to work with these groups to ensure that Idaho appropriately implements the International Building Code and other codes.
Our BOMA members have been called upon regularly to work with state and local officials on regulatory matters. Many times regulations are developed by cities in the state of Idaho that just don't understand commercial real estate. We've worked on that in terms of commercial leasing, property management, and a variety of subjects where we have ensured that the industry's concerns are addressed.
You learn a lot, both from each other, best practices. You know, what have you learned from this experience? What have you learned from this experience? What have we learned from this experience, kind of thing, as well as just all of the resources that BOMA brings together for the benefit of the membership's ability to continue to learn and continue to grow.
A couple of the real significant relationships that I've made in this business have been at those BOMA luncheons, just happening to sit next to someone that ends up being a relationship that made a big difference.
With big projects and resilient leaders, our storytellers remember those that impacted them. For Oppenheimer, it was his friend, fellow developer, and entrepreneur Peter O'Neill, who passed away in 2021.
But Pete really deserves a lot of credit for kind of taking the time to look at the overall master plan. And the good news when he got to that point was the project's going to be so much better off, and most importantly, downtown Boise is going to be so much better off. So we ended up with a really thoughtful kind of core of downtown that we all enjoy so much now, but it took some vision of that kind of leadership to make it happen.
You've got folks like Jim Tomlinson and Gary Christensen, and a lot of people who aren't doing a lot of development now, and names that people don't think about. Obviously, the Oppenheimers have had a big impact.
I think the renaissance of downtown Boise, which in my recollection, it was people like Skip Oppenheimer that were involved in that. My dad, Chuck, played a role in that. One person that has been involved in a lot of the retail around here, Larry Leisure, he's kind of a legend in the retail business around here, so I always think of him.
Well, Bodo definitely, because I think it was one of the first major steps in large construction projects in downtown that would start the next renaissance. The first ones being buildings like the Alexander Building and the Mode Building. But it wasn't until Bodo showed up that I think outside investors took a real interest in downtown Boise as a place to spend or to invest significant amounts of money in new projects.
I mean, honestly, who wouldn't say that the Zions Bank project wasn't just so instrumental in the development of downtown Boise, and what Tommy Alquist and his team at that time, did and just kind of put into play. And I think once that happened, I think it also just really rejuvenated a lot of the people downtown, and look at it now.
I think when I think about projects that have really, in my mind, the ones that are successful are the ones that have stood the test of time. And to me, those are projects like Franklin Town Plaza by the mall. It's been Treasure Valley Marketplace in Canyon County. It's been obviously the Village. Those are the ones that are probably stand out to me the most. And then now you have 10 Mile with 10 Mile Crossing with Brighton.
And as major projects continue to take shape in the market, BOMA supports the community of members and leaders behind them.
Rather than just local developers and investors involved in our market, we have institutional type investors from all over the country, and even some from other countries that have invested in real estate here. And I think their expectation for level of service is higher.
It's always interesting to talk about the Boise area market. People see a lot of national headlines about office attendance, about downtowns that aren't thriving. Different challenges that the really big markets are definitely facing, but the growth that we've seen here in the Valley has just helped us kind of outperform those other markets and continue to grow despite some of the same challenges they're facing.
Every building has a story, every project has a story. We just completed 11th in Idaho during COVID, which was a crazy adventure. Jump is amazing. people still ask, you know, how do you describe that? You can go further out west, you can go out to 10 Mile and everything that's happening there, and on Highway 16 coming in. I mean, we just have so many things going on. Of course, you can't say anything today without mentioning Micron with 30-something cranes in the air now. It's been never ending, quite honestly, for the 32 years I've been here.
Well, I'm encouraged about the future. I think it's going to be, I'm very optimistic about the direction that the economy is going and the growth of Boise.
The future is very bright for Boise, for Treasure Valley, and for Idaho.
Today, we celebrate the history of BOMA, Idaho. We honor the visionaries who built it and the community that sustains it. Here's to the next 40 years of growth, connection, and innovation.
40 years, and wow, I mean, that's magnificent.
BOMA, Idaho, happy birthday. 40 years has been a long time, but we'll keep going and we'll do it another 40.
Congratulations on your 40th anniversary. Have a great event.
The party starts now.
I would like to take this moment to wish BOMA, Idaho a very, very happy 40th anniversary.